911 is fully operational as well. Traffic is moving slowly through the city. It often moves slowly, of course, during rush hour, but that has been somewhat exacerbated by the events of the day. Many of the buildings downtown were evacuated in the immediate aftermath of the earthquake, and appropriately and responsibly so, we had a number of employees who did not go back into the buildings for a variety of reasons, and they went home. Later in the afternoon, around 4:15, we decided to dismiss all employees who were not essential or emergency employees in the city. So we actually did have what I would call a tiered or a staggered dismissal of employees this afternoon for those reasons. We have a variety of protective measures that we are asking people to be mindful of. I'm going to ask Millicent if she would come up and talk about those. In the meantime, Metro is running. The buses are running. The Metro trains are running at about 15 miles per hour as a protective measure, which of course means they are clearly running behind schedule, but for safety measures, they're running at that speed. The buses are running. There are heavy crowds using mass transit in the District of Columbia, as you might imagine. Reagan Airport was closed for a time. It has now been opened again. And the last report we have is that VRE and Amtrak both are closed until further notice. We have had no reports of power outages. Pepco seems to be fine. Washington Gas seems to be fine, although we've had some reports of people experiencing gas leaks or smell of gas, and that is being checked at this stage. Before we go further, I'm going to ask Millicent if she will come up and talk about some of the protective measures that we ask people to
Mayor
take.
Vince Gray in downtown at the Wilson Building in the district, talking about the minimal damage and disruption that we have experienced in the city. Only minor damage and only minor injuries that we have heard about. But we also hear the mayor talking about the ongoing efforts to make sure that that everything is safe, that the schools and buildings overseen by the district are structurally safe for people.
And we are certainly grateful for the fact of that kind of information. As noted, this storm had a wide breadth. It went all the way from down in Atlanta, Georgia, all the way up into Canada. And that includes Midtown Manhattan. Was there. And did you actually feel the tremors there, Paisy?
Actually, Jim and Doreen, I didn't. I was on the ground, I was on the street walking to work, and I didn't even realize anything had happened until my BlackBerry started ringing. I had phone calls, text messages of people saying, "Are you okay? Did you feel that?" And it did happen here in New York, even though it seems so unlikely. Now, we do get earthquakes in this part of New York, but usually they're so minute that it's negligible. But this time, these tremors were so strong that people felt them from the suburbs of Long Island all the way up to Westchester, and right here in Midtown Manhattan, you can see we've got these really tall skyscrapers. People were reporting things, feeling tremors and shaking on the 40th floor even. There were evacuations. We're now joined by two tourists. You were visiting Ground Zero at the time, right? Why don't you come over into the picture? This is Adriana and her mother.
And Dawn.
Yeah, and where were you guys at the time?
I was taking my relatives from Italy around Ground Zero, and suddenly I just noticed I became extremely nauseous with a headache. My daughter, Adriana, was in the car with my sister because she was tired. I ran back to the car after I saw all these people run out of the buildings. I got nervous, so I ran back to the car.
And you were sleeping? You got woken up from sleep?
Yeah, I thought I was having a nightmare because I felt so nauseous, and, well, I felt like, you know, after 9/11 and everything, you don't know what's going to happen. And we thought it was a terrorist attack, so we were so scared.
Yeah, oh boy. And you were at Ground Zero as well,
Right.
you know. So what did the...
seeing people run
And it's like,
with their
oh
phones
my God.
What was scarier, the tremors or seeing people run?
and seeing people run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The panic afterwards.
Well, I just didn't have communication. I didn't have my phone, and she was in the car. Freaked me out.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, I'm glad that everything turned out okay, and now this is nothing more than an exciting story, right?
Exactly. I'm very happy myself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Adriana. Enjoy the rest of your trip. Now, you see, that is one of the things that people did have on their minds. I mean, we spoke to someone who worked in a building in Midtown on Park Avenue, and he worked on the 40th floor. He felt the building move side to side, and suddenly they're telling people to evacuate. He walked down 40 flights of stairs with hundreds of other people. There were people crying. There were the elderly, the disabled. People were trying to help them down the staircase. And he said, you know, I couldn't help it. It did remind me of 9/11, and a lot of people who were evacuated from the buildings and went through the trauma today actually never even went back into their offices. So while we can, you know, sort of laugh now afterwards because this was just a tiny tremor and nobody was hurt, at the moment it was a very harrowing experience. Jim and Doreen, back to you.
Daisy Chang, thank you very much from Manhattan, and certainly understandable why people would feel dread and awful anticipation of what might be going on.
As we know, a lot of people here in Washington
Felt
the very same feeling. Today's quake is causing gridlock out on our roads right now, riding the rails or even trying to hail a taxi. Chris Gordon is on the National Mall with more on the earthquake's aftermath and what it means for those trying to get home to their families. Chris?
Well, Doreen, it was so much more than an afternoon rush. It was a crush, and it lasted earthquake, and it caused chaos for commuters. Traffic came to a crawl along Connecticut Avenue and all major commuter routes north and south. All side streets were crowded. Cars blocked intersections, making them impassable. Many commuters took Metro Rail despite some misgivings about going underground after the earthquake.
I had to get home, and traffic is crazy outside, so I'd rather get on the Metro.
At Union Station, emergency vehicles responded, but there were no injuries reported after ceiling tiles in at least 3 locations throughout Union Station fell to the marble floor below. Tile, concrete, and glass all broke as passengers from Amtrak and Metro Rail realized the rumble during the earthquake was so much louder than normal.
Remember hearing a loud noise, and then there was a lot of screaming and running and ducking, and then it was either stay there where there was no way out or come up and try and run out, so I ran out.
Metro Rail has been running at about 15 miles an hour, but commuters say it isn't that bad, and the traffic gridlock that seemed to last all afternoon. Washington, back to you now in the studio.
Chris Gordon, thank you, Chris.
Let's find out from our weather center now what we can expect with this double whammy we got working for us here. An earthquake and a hurricane coming our way. Doug and Veronica.
That's right. You got a double whammy weather-wise, and that's why there's 2 of us here right now.
Right, but I'd say that we're more concerned with what Irene is going to do next and the aftershocks. The aftershocks from this sort of thing usually have less intensity. And what I've seen, too, just looking at the list of the areas impacted. First, it was the whole northeast quarter of the country, all the way up into Canada, Quebec, all the way over to Chicago and around Grand Rapids and south down to Atlanta. And now with these aftershocks that we've gotten, which so far there have been 2, the last one that I saw was at 3:20, it's been a little less far-reaching. So it hasn't been rippling out as far. A lot of folks initially, they called in and said, well, does the weather have anything to do with earthquakes? No, it doesn't. That happens well below our Earth's surface and not up in the sky. So, of course, all this taking place shortly before 2 o'clock today, and several aftershocks are quite possible as we go through the next couple of days and nights.
And you can see right there, we've already gotten 2 aftershocks, one of magnitude 2.8 at 2:46, another one at 2.2 magnitude at 3:20 in the afternoon. Those were most likely not felt by really anybody other than the folks that are right around that mineral area, right around that seismic zone down there toward the south, maybe in Richmond, but anything under a 3 or really a 4, you're really not going to feel. So that's some good news for us. And any aftershocks that we see throughout the evening tonight and really into the next couple of days and maybe the next couple of weeks will be on this lesser end. So I don't think we're going to see too much in the way of any kind of shaking around our area. But once again, if you do feel that shaking, you want to make sure you stay indoors until it's all said and done. Now, this was a big earthquake for our region. As a matter of fact,